Is it harder to walk back someone to that approach that has been unprofitable for a long time to get them to a profitability standpoint as opposed to someone that's kind of doing well, and there's a profit margin, but they just spend it all because they don't know what the hell they're supposed to be doing? Um, it, I've always heard that it's more difficult to walk back to solvency and profitability, if that term makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more difficult if you're not making enough profit.
Yeah.
To, allow
cover your taxes, cover your
business to survive and pay your taxes. Then yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what a lot of people tend to fall to is if all of a sudden their, we'll call it their business algorithm, their business model, if it's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And we realize that a lot of individuals, when they hit PPP, like with COVID, when they got the PPP loans, that's when a lot of the business models changed because they had an influx of cash come in, a lot lower expenses because some employees were on furlough, and there's a lot of times where the money coming in really didn't always match up with the money going out because it came in such a large lump sum. It was almost like a windfall. So everything
that saved a lot of people's balance sheets.
It saved a lot of people, but it also hurt a lot of people in the long run. Because when you get a windfall, you spend them.
That's right.
They saw money in the bank, so it's like everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there were underlying problems that went unaddressed.
Yeah, the habits of how you handle money coming into the organization are something that you have to establish early on. The sooner the better. In what you're talking about right now. And in that, and our philosophy is, hey, when a dollar comes into your organization, you need to know where 99.9% of that money is going to go before it even comes in. Like what are the accounts or expenses that money's going to go? And obviously those, your personal tax liability, your profits have to be part of that equation. And I just think that when you look at most practice owners, they wildly underestimate how much their business actually needs to be doing for them to live their ideal life. They just wildly underestimate it. I think they only think, hey, if I'm just bringing enough in to barely pay myself and to cover all the expenses on my P&L, I'm good, with a small profit margin. And that's where we're always like, no, you're going to always struggle if you take that approach right there.
It kind of makes sense though, right? Because, if money is something that you don't understand and numbers are something that are scary to you, which is most individuals, by the way,
kind
of an out of sight, out of mind, right? Until all of a sudden cash flow is really a problem, I don't want to look this in the eye. So one of the things we try to do is we build a cadence with our clients where we almost force them to look at everything at least once a month, because we want to make sure that you have an understanding, good or bad. We want you to know where you're at.
Yes.
If there's a day in the future where you're going to run out of money, I want that to be, I don't want that to come as a surprise. And unfortunately, what we tend to find is when cash flow's tight, there's a really big emotional response that comes with it. So we always refer to as drowning.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, cash flow is really tight, and we know that we're scratching and clawing for every dollar. Whenever you get that drowning feeling that sets in, what do people tend to do? They work harder, they take on more clients or more patients. They tend to do more, but a lot of times, they're kicking. Right? If you're drowning, you're just going to start kicking. But if you're kicking in the wrong direction, which a lot of business owners tend to do, because they'll bring on clients that they're actually losing money on.
Yeah, not only that, or they'll start just to do an automatic cut of like really important things that they need. Like I think that's another thing that we've seen, like when people get into a cash flow crunch like that, it's like the first and obvious response is, oh, I better just go cut. And you're never going to economize your way into profitability. No. It just doesn't happen. Like you have to make sure that expenses are things that are going to provide more value to the business long term, or short term. But you have to look for revenue enhancements as well.
Oh yeah, a lot of time it is cutting, but it's cutting revenue streams. I mean, it's if you have a carrier that you're losing money on every time you go and do that visit,
Yeah.
It's time to cut your lowest carrier. A lot of times it's just holding certain employees accountable. You
Yeah.
want employees to be able to pay for themselves. And if they're not seeing enough visits, it's really easy to turn to that employee and be like, you're just not doing your job. Yet sometimes it's the marketing. If not enough new patients come in, how can they do that job?
What
And it's hard to identify that underlying, lever or trigger without kind of diving into some of the data and saying, like, is it this particular location that's holding us back? Is it this particular team? Is it this particular revenue stream?
Yep.
You have to identify the problem, bring self-awareness to it before you can make the appropriate change.
Man, that's so good because it is true. It's like the emotional response of, oh my God, I'm drowning. I like the way you put that. I'm drowning, I'm drowning, I'm drowning, is that you're just gonna kick and you're gonna do all these stupid motions as opposed to just probably trying to stay calm and say, what is the reason for the deficiency? Like I have to go inspect. Okay. Is it my front desk person that's not scheduling people as it should? Is it um my biller who's not collecting what I should, what is the discrepancy? Because there's a number I should be making every month, okay, that allows me to be solvent. And when I say solvent, people always just automatically assume solvency is just barely getting by. No, solvency to me is like where you have excess, okay, where you have, more than what you need,
Yeah.
which includes your taxes, your owner compensation, and reinvestment back into the business.